A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night to all of you folks tuning in from wherever you are. My name is Tung, and today I'm here with Dusadee Huntrakul at Bangkok's CITYCITY Gallery in the space where his next solo exhibition is going to take place. The Commoner's House will actually open in a couple of days from when we are filming this conversation. And together with Dusadee today, we would like to share with everybody a simple conversation about this current exhibition, as well as his practice and its development over the past few years. So thank you so much for joining in on the conversation today, Dusadee. So nice.
Thank you, John, for doing this.
Yeah. I think maybe we should start off by maybe framing the Commoner's House, to the people who are tuning into this conversation. So perhaps you would like to share a little bit on how the idea for this particular exhibition first came about.
Well, at the beginning, it was, this exhibition was in the making while we're facing the pandemic, of course, and we're under lockdown, and like luckily, the place that we're staying in has a tiny garden, and so me being an artist and having to kind of see things all the time like a visual artist, and so and so I started to look for things in the garden, and I started to see insects, right? And so and once I saw one, so I thought, and then I started taking pictures of them, and one became 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and so on, and so and of course, these insects are pretty complicated in terms of the patterns and how they're put together. If you think about them in the perhaps evolutionary perspective of some sort of, which I don't really know of how they come about to this point in time, but I think it's that need to see something and to keep sharpening your visual kind of capacity, I guess. And so it came out of that, of needing to see something and seeing a lot of insects, even though we're living in the city at the time, and I only discovered only a fraction of what I think that of the number of insects that are actually living in the middle of Bangkok, which is like a mega, a huge city itself. Yes.
And yes, and I completely agree. And I think that a lot of your practice, and especially evident in the show, you're always trying to introduce to people new ways of seeing, and especially, a particular kind of attentiveness to almost our everyday surroundings. And of course, right behind us, this expansive suite of photographs that you have taken on almost a ritualistic daily basis is presented as part of the exhibition. It's 158 images. And very often, I guess one could argue that, these things are very, very small. They are the details, it's things that are easy to go unnoticed. But at the same time, they are really large things that we generally do not pay attention to in the city as well. And within this particular exhibition, you have almost alchemically transformed them and reappraise them into objects of value. And of course, what I'm talking about is one of these things right here.
Right.
These traffic markers, which are ubiquitous, across Bangkok. You find them in all of the sois, and it actually most cities around the world. And to me, they're exciting sculptural forms, right? And what drew you into those objects? Share with us a little bit about the process of making these brass works.
With these brass works, I think, I've always fascinated by objects that people would make, and to make use of them in such a way that is particular to our time, I guess. It's fascinating. And of course, they use common things that they have lying around the house. And of course, the, the, the function of these objects are to claim space, usually, a public space that uh, ties to some sort of their relationship with who owns what and who gets to use what, when, and how can a person can claim something that doesn't perhaps like belong to them. And so and of course with the possibilities of combination of objects that you can put together to make these no parking traffic cones. Even though there are like two components to it, like the pole and then the body of it to give it weight so it can stand on its own. I would like to say that almost as if the possibilities are quite huge, even though you only have two options. And I think within that, they do hold some sort of this sculptural value to them too. Somehow that it has that kind of like that ready-made sensibility, I think, to them, and definitely it talks about technology and the visions of us now,
Right.
in this particular like place, as in perhaps like Bangkok or in Thailand. And I think you guys might have it as well in Singapore and stuff like that,
Yeah.
but they're not quite the same. And I believe that they have something like this in Indonesia, Jakarta, and all those places.
All major cities have
Yeah, but I guess I would like to maybe like see if is there any other places in the world that would make like no parking, cone that kind of have this sensibility as the Thai people.
And before we talk about the final set of ceramics that are also in this show, I wanted to like kind of digress a bit because and talk about some of the concerns that have pervaded your practice and I think are exceptionally evident because of these new suite of brass works that are within the show, which is this idea of attributing value to things. It is something that I think you have touched on across numerous works in your prior exhibitions. In encountering, such parking cones on the streets, they are made oftentimes with, discarded materials. You could say that they are from upcycled materials from something which was refuse and made into something that is now functional. But recasting them in brass, and placing them within the gallery context, the value of these things changes, and we become even more aware of how they are actually very exciting sculptural forms. And so this idea of value, you have teased and you have, touched on throughout your practice. You had a particular work a few years ago about the future of things where everything was shit and shit itself was valuable. And this idea of feces has been employed by you as a metaphor to talk about value. So what is your position on like the appraisal of the value of various things in like society today?
Well, I think value is really important in a sense that, if you really think about it structurally, I think, it ties to the economic kind of, system in which we are subscribed to, what is important really. And I think, for me as an artist, I think if I can pull anything out of this is that I can perhaps like expand or, insert something that I think is quite as true as well. And so, for example, with the feces and stuff like that, and now we know that, of course, it is about consumption. It is about and consumption in itself is about production. Right? And so, and of course, like feces is about recycling and rejuvenation and rebirth. For other kind of living things, as in like microbes and bacteria, and all those, and fungi and all those guys. And so, so I guess, just to kind of like place it in a place where I can see truth as well
Yeah.
in in the value in which I want to propose.
And of course, in the ceramics presented in this show, the feces also serve as an additional metaphor. I think now you're very, very recognizable for the incorporation of these very tiny, delicate, handmade ceramic gecko poops as part of your sculptures.
Right.
And in that particular instance, at least when I encounter your sculptures, those are always serve as markers of the non-human presences that we are constantly coexisting with. And I know the story of how the gecko poops first came about, but perhaps you could share that story of your prior studio and your experiences with them.
My experience, with gecko started a long time ago when I was really, really young, and but somehow, and should I go into that kind of? It's kind of like a sad story, perhaps.
Yeah.
The first encounter.
Yeah. We could start there. It's part of your most recent artist book. The story is there.
Yeah. So, the first story that I had with the gecko was that I used to have this like a pencil holder, like a box of some sort, and then one day and at the time I was in first grade perhaps, and I was in boarding school, and one day I came into the study room in the morning and I had to finish up my homework before breakfast. And I opened up my pencil case, the box, and then and then in it was this dead gecko, right? And of course, someone put it there. But what was really, really, stuck with me was the smell of it, like the smell of this dead gecko that somehow within a night or two, the smell stuck to the pencil case, of which at the time I didn't know what to do with it. But of course, like I got rid of the body, but the smell lingered like for months, like the smell of this dead things, And so that's my first encounter with the gecko, thinking back. But later on, and of course, we have common house geckos everywhere in Thailand, and they would come into the house, they would stay and live with us somehow, and they do represent this kind of like this wilderness, like something that is beyond our control somehow. And
I remember in like your old studio that was on the outskirts, you would
Right.
have, this entire rack of all of these ceramic works that you made, and they would put indiscriminately on whether it was artwork or not. And that always stuck with me because I thought that was exceptionally interesting because when it comes to art, it is something that we place on a pedestal. It's something that we hold in high regard, something of cultural importance, value, but at the same time, that does not mean other life forms, hold it in such great esteem. And that moment when you shared that story with me, it was almost a paradigm shift in terms of my thinking and my approach towards the understanding of art. What kind of value are we creating, and value for whom as well? And I think at that point it started, me thinking about the interconnectedness that's also very, very much present in your art practice. And just to like kind of tie in the ceramic works with the brass pieces and the photographs that are present in the Commoner's House, your current solo exhibition, what seems as disparate objects or suites of works to an individual who is not exceedingly familiar with a practice, the connections are very, very familiar to me because like I can see how those insects feed into that food web. The geckos are feeding off those things, and of course the setting of the of where this food chain is happening is right within the city itself, and the brass poles are markers of other human beings that cohabit, the these spaces with us, and objects of value, and all of that comes into place quite singularly within this exhibition together.
Right. Yeah, you can definitely see, you once you, and I mean, and it just dawned on me more and more during the COVID lockdown thing, where I started taking pictures of insects, and of course I've been making insect, like the gecko poops as well, and then now you're like seeing this kind of like this, the cycle of life around us.
Yep.
I guess in a more intelligent and more divine and magical ways, in which now you're kind of like seeing, the webs that's beyond just the gecko and then one particular type of insects. Now you can see like different type of trees, and then you can start thinking about, the soil, and of course, like all these things like living in the soil, and and so on and so forth, like within the city itself. And I think there's like this, and of course, right now I have a child, and he's like 4 years old, and there's like this one saying that I really like. I don't remember how I got this type of quote from, but it was something like this. I cannot paraphrase it, accurately, but I'll try my best. It's to make the children of this generation care about our environment. One way to do it is to make them realize the magic of nature, I think, and I think me being under lockdown, and I think one way, one of the activity that I did with my boy was that we would go around this tiny garden, and then we would search for living things. Yeah.
And I think in that respect, right, resting along that line of thought, I think what strikes me as exceedingly interesting is that, these 158 pictures of insects that you have captured in your garden, rather than coming across as entomological, which is like, the study of insects, it actually comes across as anthropological, because it becomes almost a reflection of human activities and how we are interacting with these insects, that inhabit this cityscape together with us. And on the topic of anthropology, you have been exceedingly interested, in that field of study. It has been something that you have brought across in multiple exhibitions. Even with this particular exhibition, it's exceedingly evident in a number of the ceramic works that you have made, and in past exhibitions. For instance, your work at the Singapore Biennale, the Map for the Soul to Return to the Body, you paid particular focus to the relevance of how Banqiang ceramics, could still be recontextualized and meaningful to us in contemporary times. Even prior to that, your show at, I believe, 100 Tonson, there are more monsoon songs elsewhere where you focus on the Banqiang bracelets. This idea of anthropology and archaeology, it has pervaded your practice.
Yes.
And where does that interest stem from?
Well, somehow I got really, 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 really lucky that I got to study with like amazing anthropologists. One was Anthony Seeger. He's like the nephew of Pete Seeger, the legendary, American folk singer. And another person was Ai Hua Ong. And so, and what really important to me about anthropology that I realized when I was going to school was that it gave me my power to realize that I am not just an immigrant or like, coming into this. Well, I went to school in the States, and when I went there and I felt like powerless in terms of assimilating, like assimilations, and the language and the lack of it that I didn't have. But when I took these courses in anthropology, the first one was with Anthony Seeger. It was about me, being in the States as an anthropologist, like learning, like why do people in the States do what they do, and then the plus size, the plus side of that was when then I realized too, like how Thai I was because of what I believed and what I did or what I would do at the time. But anyhow, actually, it went before that too, where I took a few courses in anthropology in junior college, where we studied, of course, like lineage of Homo sapiens, and that just blew my mind. Like it brought me back to some sort of a reality that I was happy to be a part of, I guess, to realize that I'm a part of something that as old as the universe, I
Yeah.
guess. We're
Right.
talking about like evolution, like before human, and
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
you can trace back,
Yeah.
as long as you can now too,
And of course, your
it's
second teacher, Aipa Ong, wrote The Buddha is Hiding.
Right.
And that became the subject matter of one of the works that you had presented in the earlier edition of the Singapore Biennale, 2013 edition.
Right.
And how did that, why did you select that particular text? Stemming
Yeah.
from this experience of being an immigrant in America.
Yeah, I took, I chose that text because, of course, like, I was studying with her. And at the time, Singapore was hosting the first Biennale that is about Southeast Asia. And so, me being a Thai, Ai is Chinese Malaysian,
Yeah.
and the story is about Cambodian, moving through space, and of course, it touched upon like Vietnam, like post Vietnam, as well, and of course the exhibition is in Singapore, and so it's pretty much Southeast Asian, but it's with the extension of this kind of like modern kind of like war machine that that has been that we have been experiencing and has been altering and has created this major impact, not just Southeast Asia but around the world. Like for example, like Vietnam, for example, and this text stemmed out of that, and so I chose that text because of that it could be like some sort of an anchor to how we perceived history as Southeast Asian as well as as a world citizen, I think.
Right. And I think that that's also something that's really interesting about your works is that for me, I feel like there's this sense of a timeless quality to it, because while you are having historical or perhaps archaeological points of reference, it's also very, very much future thinking at the same time. From the gallery that we're having this conversation in, right outside the gallery walls, it's currently a lot of posters about the diplomatic relationships between countries, between Thailand and other countries around the world, whether it's like 400 years of diplomatic ties or 150 years of diplomatic ties. There are all these posters around, but I think what you bring into the conversation is that additional dimension of looking forward into the future. And to me, that's critical because I do not know about you, but for me, I feel that you are also offering proposals for ways in which we can live with one another, and not just that, not with one another as human beings, but with other living organisms as well. Is that something that you hope that audiences take away after experiencing your works?
Definitely, like I mentioned that I have a child, and I think and he's 4 years old, and I think once you have a child, you're somewhat forced to think ahead, at least for a year or two, at least, but of course, like you dream of thousands and thousands of years, or hundreds, or like millions, or something. But with this exhibition itself, a lot of the pieces here are about dreaming.
Yeah.
And I think, dreaming is about, of course, your experience, but also it connotes, like the desire, I think, to get somewhere. And I would like to dream about, places that we do, like as commoners, like have, fair access to all, and it's not just us, of course, now we're like in this particular point in time in our like human history where we know that we as human has been making the most impact to the world, and we hold the keys to kind of like do something maybe perhaps to and so yeah, I do dream of places that are taken care of in a way that is sustainable somehow. I don't even know what that means, but because it's tough still, to really
But
dream about.
sustainability is something that you and I. It's great that you said that. I don't even know what that means because it comes in such a huge myriad of forms, and with Map for the Soul to Return to the Body, you gave each vessel that was created its own title, and
Yeah.
it pertained to issues of the environment, agriculture, the education of young people, and all of those things feed into this idea of sustainability, or one facet of sustainability at the same time. And with this entire suite of artworks, I think that what you are prompting almost is a recognition, a recognition of the importance of things which are generally trivialized by us, by human beings in their daily life.
Yeah.
And to also elaborate, on this idea of dreaming, there's also that idea of the enmeshment of the subconscious and the conscious at the same time. And I wonder, like, if those dreams feed into how you decided to title some of those works, right?
Yeah.
There are quite a number of works in the Commoners House that are titled Dreaming of Something or By Something, like Dreaming by the Foothills of the Mountain. Where did those titles emanate from?
It just from my personal longing, I guess. I do want to live in a place where it's perhaps greener than Bangkok, and I guess a mountain here could, or somewhere could be an answer where with the laws that we have now, if I remember correctly, it's that we cannot own the area of the mountain. Like you cannot buy it somehow, and so you assume that it's still left, somewhat wild, and so you want to live kind of maybe close, maybe to that wilderness. But me being closer to that, it's probably me like going in to destroy it again.
Yeah.
But it's that dream, and thinking about like I'm like dreaming. There's like this one particular piece that I now just came into back to me from the Map from the Soul to Return to the Body. There's like this particular piece with the title of what is it? Divert all labor force to produce healthy ecology. And I think that's kind of like, it seems like possible, and we all will earn a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it's not just money itself. We earn money while doing better things, I guess. That's but of course, like, what are these better things? I guess you have to list them out and consult, I guess.
Right. And so I
The
guess
expert.
perhaps maybe a good way to round up our conversation today is to maybe talk a little bit about the title of the exhibition itself, because we had discussed a few potential titles when we were conceptualizing and trying to frame the exhibition, and we settled on the Commoners House in the end. And I think both of us have slightly different readings of what that title means. And what does that mean to you?
Commoner's House. It's to me it is very direct perhaps like commoner meaning means regular, like everybody, like 99% of the everybody, I guess. So it's our house, I guess. It's a house of everybody, and of course, I'm with all these insects that, of course, they don't look fancy at all. If you look far, of course, but each one, even like a fly, is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's so complicated that you couldn't imagine. And so to me, it is about that. It's about something that belongs to everybody.
The magic of the everyday and the ordinary.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I also
about you?
pointed out, like, I could and I totally got that, and I was like, yes, this is things that we encounter every day that, oftentimes we need an artist such as yourself to highlight to us what's so special, what's so magical about, the uniqueness of these items or other living creatures. But at the same time, I couldn't help but feel like there's this like also a political dimension to it, because of course, the House of the Commons, right? And it led me to think of, once again, those systems of values, the empowerment of selected individuals and power disparities that exist in the world. And I think what you have done with this exhibition is offer people a very, very important opportunity to, rethink those systems of appraisal that we have. Well, how do we ascribe value to certain things? How do we say something is important and how something is not important? And I think that in this day and age, it's something that we should be thinking hard and long about.
Yeah, that's true, and I think that's the magic of art. If art can do something, it's that to kind of perhaps like shift values just a little bit. I think just to insert and then see if when one meaning is inception of some sort. You're like,
Yeah.
you go in there, you put a seed in there, and you hope that it will grow into a way, into something that is not as is.
Yeah.
It's something else.
And I do share your hopes and dreams for a more humanist future.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dusadee.
We're all
It was a
too- we're all
lovely
too- we're all
conversation. It was a
too.
lovely conversation. And to everyone else who's tuned in, I hope you have enjoyed our chat. Be sure to drop by Bangkok CITYCITY Gallery to check out the Commoner's House. It's the second solo exhibition by Dusadee Huntrakul at the gallery, and we will see you here.
Thank you very much.